Please start, Didier.
I can start?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to organize a third webinar on energy demand modeling. Next slide, please. Okay, we have different activities under the so-called meetMED Observer platform, where we organize data collection for monitoring energy efficiency and a series of webinars on modeling. We did the first one on October 2022, where we discussed the different methodologies that you are using in the region for forecasting energy demand. The second workshop was more on discussing what kind of scenario are you developing, are you carried out about energy efficiency scenario. And this workshop, which is the last one of the series, will discuss about results that we can observe and analyze in your practice in the region. So it will, let's say, result of what you have done so far in the region about energy demand forecasting. Next one. So we plan to discuss different presentation, different topics. First, what is the role of energy efficiency and sufficiency in slowing down the energy demand growth? We have introduced this topic because I have seen in different training and different occasions that some of you, some Mediterranean country, are publishing reports on energy efficiency and sufficiency, sometimes on forecasting, sometimes on national energy efficiency action plan. We will discuss about potential of energy efficiency and sufficiency in different sectors based on your different practices. And in particular, we will discuss the prospect of increasing the share of electricity in different sectors, and what kind of technology are you planning to use. And we also we discuss the contribution of renewable in the final consumption and in the power mix. So to do next one, to do that, we will suggest the following agenda. I will start a presentation, sort of a theoretical presentation, I may say, on what are the drivers of long-term energy demand scenario. Then we will have a more practical session through detailed sectoral approach. During a first session on 1 hour, we will different result on different end use, like air conditioning, cars, electrification in industry. It will be done by Florent Gauthier from Air Data with the help of Bruno Lapillon. We will have a Q&A discussion, and then the second session will be more focused on the power sector. And we will see in your different exercise what is the level of contribution of renewable energies in different scenarios, and we will have a discussion conclusion about this webinar. So yeah, I hope this agenda will suit you, and that we will have a fruitful meeting. Next one. So concerning the introduction, the drivers of reduction of energy demand growth relies on two main pillars. We are discussing here at two levels, the level of final consumer and at the level of, let's say, our final energy demand. And we will have also a discussion about level of primary consumption. Coming back to the final consumer, there are two main ways to reduce energy demand. is to make energy efficiency, and everybody here around this, I may say, virtual table. Come back. Yeah. Everybody around the table, because you are mainly from agencies, know what is energy efficiency. So I will not elaborate too much on what kind of measure we can develop in that sector. What is maybe newer for some of you, it's about the second pillar, which is sufficiency. And I try to elaborate on that based on the case that we developed in France. Next one. So in France, now we have around 140 energy efficiency measures. And what is important is to see where the policy are implemented in terms of sector. And it's clear that it's a household where we implement the bulk of our policies. And it's due, in case of France, due to the energy efficiency directive and the energy building directive. So these two in European regulation force all the member states to implement policies. So this is why you can see that the bulk is on these two sectors. We have cross-cutting policies like energy taxation or energy efficiency obligation. And we have industrial policies, which also are linked to the European directive on ETS, quota on CO2. And more, the policy in industry will be implemented in Europe, will be linked to the decarbonization of industry. And of course, we have transport, where it's also a very important sector where we apply measures. The difficulties that there are very few pure energy efficiency policy in transport. It's mainly transport policies which have an impact on energy efficiency. A good example is speed limit. Do we consider it's an energy efficiency policy or a transport policy for safety? So I will not go in details which type of policies we have. We have regulations, subsidies, taxation, voluntary agreements, etc. But I will just mention that you can, if you need ideas on energy efficiency policies, you can have a look in the MEO database, which cover around 3,000 energy efficiency policy in Europe. Next one. So I will shift to sufficiency, and I propose we discuss a bit on that topic because, as I mentioned in the introduction, I see some attempt in your country to introduce this concept of sufficiency. I have put here there is a definition at the level of the GIEC, but here I put the definition of ADEME, which is very close to that. And this definition encompasses three pillars. To cover the basic need, this is clear, of energy services, but under two conditions. Under that it's equitably done among different class of revenues, and also that respect ecological limits. And these three pillars go together. The second point, it's when I discuss with some of our colleagues from Mediterranean country, you are mainly thinking about sufficiency, about change of behavior. This is clearly part of the sufficiency, but I think we should have a more broader views of sufficiency. It includes also industries. They have duties to propose cars which are less heavier, etc. So industry have an impact on sufficiency and the responsibility, and also the states and local authorities to provide condition to that consumer can apply sufficiency. For example, I would like to make bicycle, but I need track for bicycling. And this track from bicycling are investment at state or local level. So to summarize, sufficiency is not only change behavior of consumer, it's also encompass the role of different stakeholders, including industry and state. Next one. Just some example, there are different typology of sufficiency, and this topic is new for, let's say, political implementers. It was mainly NGOs and academics we were working on sufficiency. And for instance, ADEME is taking very seriously this issue of sufficiency. And we have around 100 persons in ADEME which are working on that topic. I give you some example. You can have collaborative sufficiency, carpooling, or sharing some space in your building for collaborative use for refrigerator and TVs. You can have usage of sufficiency using soft mode like cycling. You have the size sufficiency to have less bigger car, less SUV, and less big refrigerator. And you have another example of advertising sufficiency. We can discuss about chosen sufficiency or forced sufficiency. So there are many ways on acting on sufficiency, but again, it's not only just an issue of behavioral change. Next one. In the MED database, if you are interested to have some example of sufficiency policy, which are currently implemented, you can go to the MED database, and there is a specific button where you can have this energy sufficiency policy implemented in Europe. I may say it's a new tool, and I'm not sure that all these policies are fully sufficiency, but it gives you some example of what we can do it now, because these policies are already implemented. Some are direct sufficiency measures, some are more indirect sufficiency measures. Next one. I give you here some example of sufficiency measure in the case of France. For example, interdiction of short domestic flight if some alternative rail exists. Promotion of safe and eco driving, etc. So you will see in the presentation, in the document, some examples, for instance, with the bonus-malus scheme for cars, which is, I think, a very interesting policy that maybe you can implement in the region. Next one. We have developed the long-term vision for the decarbonization of the French economy, and we have 4 scenarios, and one of the scenarios, we call it S1, is so-called sufficiency scenario. We have a second scenario on energy efficiency, and what I propose you to the next slide is to explain you or to compare what we call a sufficiency scenario and what we call an energy efficiency scenario. Next one. So without surprise, so the S1 is what we call the sufficiency scenario. It's a scenario where we have less car and less dwelling than in 2015. So you imagine that in France, in 2050, we have on road less cars than now, and we have less dwelling than now. And without no surprise, this scenario, S1, the sufficiency scenario, provide the best way to decarbonize the industry, and we have to use only what we call biological things. If you go to scenario 4, where we do nothing, we need to go to reach the decarbonization, we need to have a large level of sink, which, in my opinion, are not available. However, it's clear that next one, S1 and S4 are the most difficult scenario. Here, I will not go in detail, just to explain you what I take the case of household where we can apply more sufficiency measures for the moment. Some example of what we have put in our scenario in terms of hypotheses. For instance, as I told you, we will have less dwelling in 2050. How we will do that? We will use the vacant homes and we will transfer some non-used tertiary surface. We translate that in dwelling. So this is how we can have less number of dwelling. We can also limit the space per person. It's clear for the service sector, but we can buildings flat rather than private home, and we can increasing the turnover. At the building level, we can use more the office. For instance, when they are not used during the night, they can be used for housing end use. We can decrease the thermal needs, for example, using less hot water. At ADEM, for the moment, for instance, we do not have any more hot water in our toilets. We can limit the level of the use of air conditioning. And in case of ADEM, for instance, we have put 18 degrees as an indoor temperature for space heating. So I will not elaborate that, but if you are interested, you can see some example of hypotheses on how we have designed our sufficiency scenario. Next one. This to be more concrete, I take 2 or 3 cases, the specific uses where we have, you can see the difference of S1, it's efficiency scenario, S2, it's energy efficiency scenario. And you can see that the size of screen for TV will be by regulation, maybe lower than for S2 as an energy efficiency scenario. The fridge average lifespan will be higher for efficiency scenario than efficiency scenario, etc. Next one, the case of having less building, you can see here that it's very different compared to the trend. We have number of households which will be reduced, but it's the same for the efficiency and sufficiency scenario. You can see that the holidays home in the stock, let's say we call it bed and breakfast, will be lower in the sufficiency scenario, and we will have less vacant home in the stock in these 2 scenarios than in the classic business as usual scenario. Next one. So on the left side, you can see what type of policies we can implement to do that. For example, raising a property tax on vacant housing and holidays home. So we have hypotheses, but we have also behind ideas of some policies to reach this hypothesis. Next one. Last example is on air conditioning, where you see that we will reduce the equipment rate in the efficiency and sufficiency scenario compared to the business as usual, and the point of setting the temperature will be similar. So there are not too much difference between these 2 scenarios. Next one. So what are the results of that type of 2 scenarios? I think it's something that you can maybe apply in the future. I will go to the 2 graphs on the bottom. where you have the consumption, the explanatory factors of the energy demand variation between 2015 and 2050. And the first driver, it's activity. We have more dwellings, etc. So it will push the demand up. But fortunately, we have sufficiency, which account for 2.4 terawatt-hour, and we have also energy efficiency. So both sufficiency and energy efficiency go together to lower the consumption. This is the same for S2, but you can see that the importance of sufficiency is a bit lower. So what is interesting, it's we were able to separate the impact of sufficiency and energy efficiency as a contributor of energy efficiency. Next one. Next one, we will see another example for different end use. You can see some example of policies we have implement recently on sufficiency, especially advertising campaign. You can just know that we have implemented that with the idea was to propose to use less product instead of having more energy efficiency products. The main message was, are you sure you need a new product? Next one. So you can go to YouTube and to check this two advertising campaign, which was made on the sense of humor. So we can speak about doing sufficiency, not as a constraint, but as a choice. And we use a funny way to present that issue. Next one. Next one. You have also practical guide on the sufficiency, but they are in French, so they can be interested for some Maghreb country. Okay, this is the last one is on a sort of conclusion. Now, when we are doing in sufficiency scenario at ADEME, energy sufficiency scenario, we have also to tackle other issues. For example, water sufficiency or rare earth sufficiency. If you are using electric vehicle, we need batteries and you need rare earth. So it means that when we are designing an energy sufficiency scenario, we have to tackle other type of sufficiency on food, sufficiency on for agriculture, etc. And the idea is to have a sort of holistic approach of sufficiency. So it's where we are going now in designing sufficiency. So my presentation was to show some new trends in designing scenario where we combine energy efficiency and sufficiency scenario. And the sufficiency scenario are not only understood as change of behavior, but it's also understood as change in the level of activities. For example, having less traffic, less car, less dwelling. So maybe I hope this presentation give you some ideas for a possible future exercise if you are interested to introduce this concept of sufficiency. In our views as ADEME, we consider that we cannot reach the full decarbonization of our French economy without introducing sufficiency. Thank you for attention. And now we will go for, there are other documents in the annex, but we will go for the next session. And I will give the floor to Florent, which present some result of comparing scenarios in different regions. So Florence, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Didier. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is fine. I'm for those who don't know me, I'm Florent Gauthier. I work at the consulting company Enerdata as head of the unit indicators and sectoral expertise. And today I'm with our scientific director, Bruno Lapillon, that who most of you already know. And today we will deep dive in several energy perspective scenarios in South Mediterranean and MENA region countries. And we will see three topics. The first one will be to focus on energy and if existing sufficiency drivers of the energy perspectives. Then we will see the role of the electrification in these scenarios, and then have discussions on the renewables in the energy demand and in the power mix. So I will present, but we also can have discussions, or if you have any question and so on. So it was expected at the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to put the hand and ask a question or make some remarks. Why that? Because we built this presentation on these several sources of information. And most of you have built these scenarios, so don't hesitate to make some additional comments, remarks, and to bring additional information for other people. A brief overview on the sources and resources that we have used for today's presentation, today's webinar. The first one is the scenario done by the Mediterranean Observatory for Energy and Climate. The last version is from 2023, and there are two scenarios for the Horizon 2050, and this one was released for the last conference of the parties. The ambitious scenario is called ProMed, and this ProMed is now, from the last version, is a net zero scenario, and they have also a reference scenario based on past trends, taking into account the current policies and the ongoing projects. So it's not necessarily a business as usual scenario. It's a reference scenario. We have seen that in the previous webinar. The second source of information is Unite for Efficiency. They build documents for regions, and for example, the North African region. The time horizon is 2040, and they propose three scenarios: a business as usual, a minimum ambition scenario, and the high ambition scenario. And it's a good resource based mainly on electrical appliances and electrical end uses. Third one, you can find things with MED TSO, the TSO gathering all the TSOs of the Mediterranean countries, North and South countries. So they frequently build scenarios or studies with three main scenarios: the inertial scenario, the proactive scenario, and the Mediterranean ambitions, which relates with a low carbon ambition. Today I based also my presentation on the draft project of national low carbon strategy for 2050 in Morocco. We have seen in the previous webinar also some results, so we will deep dive a bit more in the sectoral results. And of course, the Tunisian scenario built in 2022, 2023, with this public contribution of the energy sector to the carbon neutrality. In this scenario, we've built a business as usual scenario, a low carbon and a net zero scenario by 2050. And for Morocco, it was 2060, sorry. For Jordan, I will let the floor to people from Jordan today, but there are several sources you can find, and a project of long-term strategy, a draft strategies, papers, and an energy strategy to 2030. I forgot, but we can mention that Algeria has also ongoing prospective projects, several. So we can talk about this with people from Algeria today. And at the local level, we wanted to deep dive today also in another document from the city of Dubai, because it's very detailed demand side management strategy with a very detailed report for the future, the projections towards 2030, but also monitoring the progress that has been done so far. So it's an interesting document also for more local results. So now the first question we will ask is if the energy efficiency and sufficiency are expecting to slow down the energy demand or the electricity demand growth in the future. So let's see what there are in the different scenarios. That makes sense to say that it can be for you figures about the energy efficiency potential. So in energy demand, in the net zero scenario from the Mediterranean Observatory, in this scenario, the results say that the energy demand in the business as usual scenario for North and South countries altogether, that it would increase by 30% compared to today. And in the net zero scenario, the energy demand has to decrease by 20% by 2050 compared to today. And focusing on specifically on the South Mediterranean countries, because in North countries the energy demand is already decreasing, but in South countries with a big increase of demography also and GDP increase, there will be much more difference with North countries. So in South countries, the OMEC says that they calculated that the energy demand should increase at maximum 6% by 2050 compared to 2023. So that one of the main levers and the main driver of this energy demand management is the energy efficiency. I will not specifically talk about sufficiency because it's not it's often not mentioned as a driver, but it can be implicitly described in what they call energy efficiency or behavioral changes. So that can be a discussion between us. Regarding the Tunisia net zero by 2050, the energy demand is 50% lower in the net zero scenario compared to the business as usual, and the business as usual, and yeah, it's 50% less, but the energy demand in the net zero scenario still increase by 20% at this time horizon. So thanks to the energy efficiency, we have a potential of 50% of reduction between these two scenarios. And in the Morocco net zero, the time horizon is 10 years later, but the energy increase by 80% compared to the 2021, so the starting year. And the energy demand in the net zero scenario is 35% less than in the business as usual scenario. So this first slide was about the energy demand, and now it's the potential of what is the potential related to the electricity demand. So it's a very good questions, because here we have two examples of projections where the ambitious scenario is decreasing the electricity demand. What we will see later is that in net zero scenario, we have two drivers, two effects. The first one, that will be this one, is based on energy efficiency on the electrical uses, and the effect is decreasing the electric demand. We will see later in this presentation that electrification of end uses and new end uses will, at the reverse, make the electricity demand increase in the future. So we will have both effects. So it has a strong impact on electricity demand projection. In this first graph, in United for Efficiency, you can see in the gray line the total electricity demand projected by 2040. It's in the business as usual scenario. And in the blue dot line, it's the minimum ambition scenario. In the green line, the high ambition scenario. And by the time horizon of 2040, the potential of reduction, combining several measures on electrical end uses, produce a decrease by 23% of the energy of electricity consumption at this time horizon. So it's not 2050, it's 2040. I will correct it. Another, the second example is in the Dubai demand side management strategy. And here, this graph is the target of decrease that Dubai is planning to do at the time horizon 2030. So it's minus 19 terawatt hour. So it's a 30% less in 2030 compared to their business as usual. And here you can see all the drivers that they have listed in the same kind of graph that Didier has presented to you. So kind of waterfall with the main expected impact from standards and labels, with 41% of the decrease. Then the regulation, green building regulation. Here, an interesting one, we can see efficient cooling, so energy efficiency in the air conditioning. Building retrofits. Here we have consumer behavior, so it's a kind of sufficiency measure. It's not all, as Didier told you, but it's a part of sufficiency. And it represents 6% of this amount of decrease. Bruno, just if you want to add some points, don't hesitate to say some things. Here it's in this slide, we put it because it's interesting. They not only make some projections in the future, but they also monitor the achievement of this 30% target yearly, a yearly assessment. And this year in 2024, they say that they had minus 60%. So it's half of the target that has been achieved so far. And with this monitoring, we can see the reality of the different drivers that they had. So the first one, second one, all that we have seen before, but 31% compared to 41% that we have seen in their planning. Installing smart meters, it represents 13% of the current monitored decrease, 12% for efficient cooling, solar, building retrofitting, 1% of consumer behavior. So it appears to be less than expected. And that's it for this very interesting example of Dubai. Now that we have seen the impact on energy demand and electricity demand, we can see sectoral example. So the first sector, we will take buildings, the building sector, and we will take one interesting example that is air conditioning. So this is a kind of scheme that can show you how we can extract, let's say, sufficiency measures. So the energy consumption can be modelized, calculated with the first driver, which is the number of households that are equipped with air conditioning. And we have here a unit consumption in kilowatt hour per household per year. It can be also a kilowatt hour per unit. So this driver, number of households equipped, relates on different parameters or variables. First, the number of households that is related to the demography. The increase of demography will make this driver increase. But also the number of households, it depends on the number of people by dwelling. So we can split also all the drivers like this. And we have also the equipment rate of each household. For the unit consumption, it depends on the temperature set point, as Didier said before, and the hours of use. If we use it 24 hours, 24, or 8 hours per day, it will make the difference at the end on the unit consumption. And of course, the technical efficiency of the air conditioner. So it's possible, depending on the level of detail of your modeling, it's feasible to have assumptions on the sufficiency that can also depend on the climate zone. It will not be the same assumptions in France than in Morocco than in Jordan, of course. And to have in mind, it's always interesting to compare the equipment rate in the net zero, so the ambitious scenario, and compare it to the business as usual. That's the way to calculate what is the amount of sufficiency. Here are some examples in the different scenarios. So as a resource, I let you the modeling choice. So it's interesting to see that you can do bottom-up modeling using stock modeling, as it is the case in United for Efficiency. And the main measure that is implemented is the minimum energy performance standards, the MEPS. And the expected savings for the unit energy consumptions are almost the same in the different scenarios that I have seen. And there are 50% of reduction compared to today. So it's the main efficiency. So this unit consumption that is decreasing by this time horizon. In the Moroccan and in Tunisian scenario, not the equipment rates are increasing also by 2040. And at this time horizon, almost all the households, let's say 92% in Morocco, 100% in Tunisia, are equipped with air conditioner. So if population growth and the equipment rates grow, it is expected to have, of course, an increase of energy demand that will be totally or partially compensated by these technical savings or including behavioral changes, of course. Okay. Second sector, the industry sector. In the industry sector, you can see in the papers of United for Efficiency, you can see two main measures. That the first one is replacing electric motors with better labels, better standards. So in the business as usual, they use the IE0 and in the high ambitions IE3 electric motors performance, and they use also different level of performance for the distribution transformers. Yeah. For the projection, yeah, they say that the motor's electricity that is projected is based on the industrial GDP projections, and for the distribution transformers, it's based on the typical capacity required for the total national electric demand, so capacity and megawatt or gigawatt. Almost all the average stock efficiency is based on the end of life stock turnover and new sales. So it's interesting to have in the modeling approach this stock representation. Let's stay in the industry sector and see the Moroccan net zero pathways specifically for industry. So in this graph, you have the amount of energy and million of equivalent oil. So the energy demand is expected to grow by almost 2.7. It's multiplied by 2.7 at this time horizon, whereas the GDP is multiplied by 3.2. And the production of cement is related to the increase of the demography, and so there are twice more people in 2060s than today. So the production of cement, mainly used for new buildings, is related to this variation. And in the scenario, the energy efficiency plays is decreasing the reference scenario by 10% in 2030 and by 12% in 2050, a bit more in 2060. So here you can see the white bars that relate to avoided energy consumption. So the colored bars shows the energy demand of the industry sector as projected in the ambitious scenario, the net zero scenario. For Tunisia, the energy demand is multiplied by 1.7, whereas the GDP is multiplied by 4 and the demography by 1.2. So the socio-economic assumptions can be very different between countries. And the energy efficiency makes the net zero scenario lower by 45% in 2050 than in the business as usual scenario, mainly by using heat pump in the low and medium heat temperatures and using better electric motors, as we have seen in U4E. The third sector is the transport sector. Yes, why I didn't do this same scheme for industry. For industry, you have activities also and unit consumption by branches, by processes. The link with sufficiency is more indirect because you can see that you can have an impact on the activity level by the sufficiency of other sectors. So if you build less houses or smaller houses, if you build smaller cars and so on, if you use less materials, that will have an impact on the activity of other industries. So the impact is can be indirectly linked. So that's why I didn't put the same graph. Here we are in the transport sector, so the driver of the demand remains quite similar, but here we have the traffic flows. For passenger, it's passenger kilometer. So one car with 4 people during 10 kilometer, it's 10 multiplied by 4, so it's 40 passenger kilometer. It's the unit to describe the traffic flow. And we have the same tons kilometer with a T, tons kilometer for goods traffic. And if we can have traffic flows in the vehicle kilometer. So in this first driver, the first is the first lever is the demography. If you multiply by 2 the demography, it will be mechanically linked with the increase of traffic flow. And then we have the mobility, so the number required per people, the number of kilometers that people will do each year. So this first level of mobility can still increase if we consider that the people want to travel more for work purpose, of leisure, or anything else. It will increase the mobility, but in as sufficiency measures, this mobility can even decrease or be stabilized or decrease compared to the business as usual scenario. And we have also the modal shift or the filling rate for goods transport. So if the number of people per car or the number of tons of material, tons of goods transported by each vehicle. So improving this filling rate, it can reduce the energy consumption. Yes, and the modal shift. As you all know, it's the using, for example, the public transport instead of individual vehicle. The second driver is the unit consumption, kilowatt hour per vehicle, for example, or per passenger kilometer. And each mode has its own efficiency, and we have here the electric vehicle that have two levers. The first is that the electrical engines have much better efficiency, and they also enable electrification of the sector. So it enables also the penetration of renewables in the power mix, so to decarbonize the electric vehicles. Here is the Morocco net zero scenario. As you can see, it's the energy consumption with the white bars. It's the reference scenario, and color 1 is the net zero scenario. So energy consumption in the land transport is 19% less in the net zero scenario in 2030 than in the reference scenario, and the decrease is by almost the half of the overall consumption, yes, in 2050, and it's more than the half in 2060. So the energy efficiency in this prospective scenario plays a major role in the future. Yeah, we will see the electrification later. Yeah. Any comments or any questions? Or I keep going to the
I can, Florent.
Yeah.
I can complement a little bit about the Dubai study. If you can go back to the slide that compare U4, yeah, this one. Apparently, the potential for Dubai, which is only for 2030, looks higher than for U4A, which is only 23% in 2050. The reason is that the U4E only looked at the efficiency of the appliances, for instance, air conditioning appliance, engine, and so on. Whereas in Dubai, they include also the efficiency of buildings, which for a country where cooling is important, it represents a significant potential. So if you remove the saving coming from buildings or outside of the appliance, we arrive to more or less the same potential. And what is interesting in Dubai, if you look here in this first graph, which correspond to the projections that were made to develop the program. And they estimated that 60% of the saving would come from more efficient buildings. But if you look at the next slide, which shows the effective results, you can see that the contribution of buildings is higher. So this means that the potential of standards in building should not be neglected. And also they included the retrofitting of building. Here they arrive at 7% of the savings. I don't remember in the objective how much it was. So it's not mentioned. It's not calculated, but okay, it's probably the same or a little bit less.
Quite the same. Yeah.
As a comment, it's about consumer behavior.
Yes, go ahead.
Consumer behavior would include somehow sufficiency. So I go back to what Didier explained at the beginning. And they plan for higher savings, 6% in 2030, but for the moment they only registered 1%. And the reason, and the report that is monitoring the progress every year is quite a significant report and provide explanation, mode of calculation, and so on. The main reason is that the saving for sufficiency were relying on the diffusion of smart appliances like automatic switch off of lighting and so on, which lag behind in terms of development, but they expect to catch up in the future. And as a comment, and going back to the first slide where you compare the three scenarios for the total demand with very different numbers, but if you look carefully at the numbers, we can conclude that the potential for efficiency in the extreme scenario is around 50% in all these cases, in the three cases. Didier, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, on this case of Dubai, if you can come back, I think for our discussion, it's the most, let's say, surprising result for me is the low impact of behavioral change. If you go to the next slide, it's about 1%.
I just explained.
Yeah, but it's a very important discussion we can have because as we see, all the policy based on standard label, mainly regulation, are working and deliver a lot of, let's say, energy savings. But for the behavior, it seems more difficult to deliver energy savings through behavioral change. And in all the discussion I have about sufficiency or in your countries, in Mediterranean country, you are dealing with behavioral change. So there is a sort of contradiction in the sense that from the Dubai experience, behavior doesn't really deliver savings. And on the other way, it's the bulk of those savings generally, especially in household, is based on behavioral change. So it's some one of the discussion we can have for the Q&A round. Thank you.
I can complement what I said earlier. Maybe in the behavior also you can include the impact of tariff, which correspond to 30% of the savings, which is the behavioral change is driven by a different type of tariff.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So now we will see the prospects for increasing the share of electricity in the different sectors. So in the first part, we have seen the potential to for energy efficiency and sufficiency to decrease the electrical demand. And now we'll see the electrification of end uses. At the global scale of cross-sectorial approach, in the OMEC ProMed scenario, the net zero by 2050, as we mentioned earlier, the energy demand should increase maximum at 6% in 2050. And at the same time, the share of electricity in the overall area should be increased from 22% today to 59% in 2050. So that makes more or less approximately an increase of, let's say, less of 4%, 3.8% per year of increase for electric demand if we do the compound annual growth rate. Exactly. Yeah. So that's for the entire region. Now, if we see the Moroccan scenario, what they have, this is the electrical production, but that will more or less feed the electrical consumption. We can see that they have the same long-term trends of 4% per year of electricity demand increase, but with a short-term transition a bit faster with 7.5% per year of electricity demand increase between 2025 and 2040. In the Tunisian scenario, now it's not only the electrical demand. Here you have the final energy consumption, the total final energy consumption, but in the pink color bars, you have the electric demand. So the electric demand from 2020 is increasing nearly at a pace of 4% per year also during this 30 year, and the level of electrification reach 55, almost 55% of electricity in final energy consumption. All of this is due to the electrification, all the uses. So it's important to notice that the overall impact on the electricity demand for net zero scenario is an increase of this electrical demand. If we deep dive in the sectoral, in the different sectors, for the transport sector, here you have figures for the electric cars in two countries. So there are different assumptions, but that leads quite to the same. So it's a deep transformation of the stock of vehicles by assuming a share of electric vehicle sales per year. So in Tunisia, there are two milestones in the project. EV sales represent 30% of the share of the sales in 2035 and 100% in 2050. in Morocco, at the time horizon 2040, there are 100% of sales of EVs as a market share, and for electrical heavy-duty vehicle, it leads to 50% of the sales in terms of assumption. So here in the Tunisian scenario, that's the result of the modeling the passenger vehicle stock of cars. So with the starting with 30% in 2030, it has an impact and it has inertia on the system to transform and to increase the share of electric passenger vehicle in the total amount. So in 2050, when there are 100% of sales of electrical vehicle, it remains more or less 60% of internal combustion engine at this date. So here you can't see, but the scenario rely on e-fuels or alternative fuels to decrease the fossil fuels consumption, but at least we can see in the pink bars, you can see the inertia with the lifespan of vehicles, the inertia of the system. So in the Moroccan scenario, at the end, the stock of vehicle is represented by 81% of electric cars and 36% of electrical heavy-duty vehicles. And on the transport curve, as we have seen before, we see compared to the first, to the starting year, very important changes on the energy mix and on the energy demand. So we have an increase of 5 MTOE of electricity. That is almost the total amount of 2021 energy demand of the transport sector. And it represents 50% of the share of energy demand, and it is completed with hydrogen and the decrease of other energy vectors. Okay, other sector, the industry sector. In Morocco, the first driver before biomass and hydrogen penetration is the electrification. So the electricity demand of the industrial sector is expected to be multiplied by 3 at the end of the perspective. So here in green, you can see the share of electricity at the current level and what will be the amount at the end. So the total amount is multiplied by 3, and it represents 40% of the energy demand of the total industrial sector, and the other energies relies on the hydrogen that is increasing each year, also starting from 0 today. And of course, we can see the decrease of the pet coke here at the bottom. For the Tunisian scenario, in the net zero scenario, so it's the same kind of graph. The electrification starts from 25% in 2019. So here it's the blue bar on the bottom, and it increases each year to be multiplied by 4 at 2050. At this level, and at the end, it represents 60% of the energy demand of the industrial sector. And in blue, you can also see the hydrogen starting a bit later for maturity reason, and the use of waste for all the high temperature heating processes. Okay. If Bruno, if you have additional comments to do, otherwise, I think Didier, we can open the different the Q&A session with the participants.
Florent, I can make a comment about the first slide where you presented the result of OMEC. It's a pity that you cannot separate between the south and northern part about the penetration of electricity. Do you think the dynamic is very different between the north and the south in terms of electrification?
Perhaps the starting point can be different, but I think that the philosophy and the available technologies for electrification are quite the same. So we perhaps will see the same, but with a 10 years with a 10 years difference. Yeah, I think if we have someone of OMEC, perhaps they have comments to do or additional information for this amount. Yeah, Lisa Guerrera, if you want to. You are muted, perhaps. I don't know if I have the. We can allow your microphone. You are muted.
Yes, I think that's working now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Thanks for this presentation. Very very informative. For the OMEC scenarios, actually, we're presenting the latest ones at COP right now. So yes, for the transport, as you said, there is a lag. Obviously, it's for the electrification, and there always has been, even in terms of engine efficiency for oil-fueled vehicles. So we're expecting this. One of the big hurdles for the South is being able to retire the existing vehicle fleet, because they tend to have much more long usages of existing vehicles. So it's going to be a real challenge. That's where it is. It's actually forcing people to retire cars that are still functioning to buy the new electric vehicles. So this is where the lag also comes in. I don't know if that answers your question, but yes, basically everyone's following the same trend, but with a lag for the South, maybe not fully 10 years, but yeah, we definitely expect things to really pick up after 2040 for South countries. Voilà.
Okay, thank you.
So I will open the Q&A session to our colleagues. Before that, I would like really to thank Florent for his really good presentation, which could be a reference study, because comparing results among countries, it's quite rare. And I think this is very interesting to have this compilation of documents. Secondly, I think when we are discussing modeling, it's important to base our discussion on concrete results. And it's what this presentation provides. We have some quantification, rate of electrification, share of efficiency, and so on. So this is a very good basis for a discussion. And I'm really happy that we can really discuss based on concrete results. There are many results, so we have to digest all this quantitative information. But it's clear that we see some differences. But finally, when we look carefully, as Bruno made, the difference, despite there is difference in economic context, in different energy context, there are some results which are, let's say, common. The rate of electrification, it's very high, and it's more or less the same as everywhere. So there are some disparities, but there are also some long-term trends which can be shared among all the countries. There are some information which can help us to discuss this issue of sufficiency. The example provided on air conditioning explain how we feel, what is the difference between, or demonstrate what could be a difference, which a scenario based sufficiency scenario based only on behavioral change, and if we take into account the change in the equipment rate. I have a question to Florent before opening the discussion. Did you see in all these studies some policies which are designing behind this scenario? Generally, we have a quantitative scenario, but there is a lack of information about the policies which we have to implement or which can help us to reach the target of decarbonization. So did you see this type of information in your different studies?
In this case, I focused on the pathways, but I've seen some measures. I don't know if we can say politics, or that will be out of my scope today. So I perhaps I would with pleasure give the floor to someone from these countries, perhaps to say which policies are based on these scenarios. From my part, I participated to the Tunisian scenario with the meetMED model, and then the actions is it's in the Tunisian part. So, and it takes some time to implement policies.
I don't say in terms of implementation. I just want to know if they describe somewhere the policies they would like to implement to reach the target. I don't speak about concrete implementation, but about at least listing the policy which can allow to reach the target.
Okay. I've seen a few, but I couldn't say more about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Didier, to answer your question, it's the reason why we pick up the case of Dubai. It's really the savings are linked to concrete measures and evaluated every year. So this is what is interesting. But it only looks at 2030, and it's different from the other scenarios that were shown for Tunisia and Morocco.
It's clear that it's difficult to. We can have ideas of what kind of policy we can implement for reaching a 2030 target. It's more difficult to think already about policies to reach 2050 target. Okay, I don't know if some colleagues from Algeria or Jordan, or Lebanon, which are also running some forecasting exercise, would like to say something, to argue, to say that they have different results or not compared to what has been presented by Florent. So you can just open your microphone. If you like, you can raise your hand, but you can also go directly through your microphone. So please.
I think they have to be allowed, because for Lisa, I had to allow her to put the camera. So please put the hand. I think
they can write the question in the Q&R also.
Yeah, but I checked, there is no particular
but they
question for them. Yes. Okay, so.
Or if someone here has participated to one of these scenarios or other scenarios, that could be interesting to have your feedback on how you calculated the energy efficiency potential, which assumption you did, if you were aware of this sufficiency pillar, and if it's interesting for you to have this. Any feedback from you will be helpful for the other participants.
Thank you, Florent. Please, if you have any question, raise your hand and I'm going to give you the microphone. Lisa?
Yes, just rebounding on the question you just asked.
Yes, you have the microphone. Okay, thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, yes. So just jumping back from the question you just asked, for sure we've included sufficiency. I mean, there's no way to reach the net zero if we don't include that. I mean, the just switching and appliances efficiency is not enough, and definitely, for instance, for cooling and heating, the buildings specification, we have to see them change over time, and it's not just the labeling, it's the whole building of it and how people house themselves and so on. So this is all taken into account, and even taking this into account because our ProMed scenario is we have to reach the end result by 2050. We basically have to use every possible option and apply it if we want to be able to reach that target by 2050. So in that sense, yes, sufficiency is definitely one of the big pillars, and for transport as well, obviously. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. No reaction on decreasing the mobility per capita in the transport sector?
Okay, if there is no question for the moment, I suggest that we go for the second round of presentation and maybe give ideas for possible additional question. Florent, just a question. Yeah. So you will make your presentation and then we allow our Jordan colleagues to say something or to react?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so go ahead.
So the first question that we wanted to ask is what is the energy efficiency and sufficiency potential? The second one was the electrification of uses. And the final one is now that we have so we have an energy efficiency effect decreasing the demand. We have an electrification effect that is increasing the demand. So now that we have more electricity in energy demand, it's important to ask the question, what is the contribution of renewables in the final consumption and in the power mix? So it's the third and best question. As we just mentioned, the potential of electrification in final consumption for all the scenarios are more or less 50% to 60% of electrification at the time horizon 2050 in the different pathways. Then how is produced this electricity? Because now it's mainly generated by fossil fuels in the South Mediterranean countries. So in the OMEC report from last year, so in 2023, the power generation is also increasing, is multiplied by 2 in 2040 and multiplied by 3 in 2050, and at this time horizon, the share of renewables is 80% in the power mix. OMEC says the capacity in gigawatt of each technology that has to be installed during this next 25 years. So starting in the current level of the global area is more or less 80 gigawatt. And it will be necessary to add 420 gigawatt of solar PV, of solar technologies, and 320 gigawatt of wind turbines. And all these figures are for South countries. So with the 80% of share of renewables in the power mix, and with the 55% of electrification in the final consumption, or 60%, we can reach a target of 55% of renewables in energy demand in 2050. That's the one of the outcomes of the report. In the Tunisian scenario, the final target of electricity is 55% in the final demand, and in the power mix, renewables account for 90%. It is not mentioned at this step which technology will lead or will be higher than the others, but they plan to have almost all the power mix covered by renewable energies. And for the Morocco net scenario, there is also a deep decarbonization from 2040. So at 2040, they reach 90% of renewables in the power mix for the pathways, for the pathway. And in the two graph on the bottom, on the left graph, you can see a projection of the installed gigawatt. So in yellow, you have the solar technologies. In pink is natural gas, and this light blue is wind turbine. And in green, they have added the electricity storage, so the flexibility capacity to make for the network security. So these are the capacities, and in black, of course, the coal. And it's important because on the right bottom graph, you can see the electricity produced by these capacities, so in terawatt hours. And here we can find the important amount of electricity generated by coal that is expected to slow down and to phase out in 2040. So it's an interesting graph because here you have the coal, the phasing out of coal, and replaced by another energy that can be manageable with natural gas here, and that will be decrease at the end of the pathways. And a few small nuclear reactors that are modeled here, also to have the flexibility needed on the network. The main amount of terawatt hour are generated by wind and by solar, almost half-half, as it is presented in the capacity. And in the electricity production, when we have a phase out or closing of power plant, we can see on the graph the fast stop of energy generated by one technology that can appear in this kind of graph. It's not the same as a stock of vehicle where the curves will move a bit smoothly. We will give the floor after that to our Jordan colleagues. Just I had an overview of the Jordan energy strategy with the time horizon of 2030, and in the strategy, it's mentioned that renewable in the electricity generation, so in the power mix, will account for 31% in 2030, starting from 21% in 2020. So what will be the pathways for the 20 next years? At least we can expect that it will be 50%, but I'm sure with a long-term strategy and with an increase of renewable development, that it will be quite similar amounts of renewable in the power mix. But yeah, perhaps we can have this information directly from Jordanian people. Okay, I'm done with the presentation. Also, if you have additional information, Lisa, to add for the OMEC scenario, or if we have people from Tunisia and Morocco that want to react. Also, Algeria. I didn't show the reason, but it will be interesting to have your comments regarding the power mix and the development of renewable energies. Yes, Lisa, please.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but definitely. I mean, the renewables. I think there's not too much of a, how you say, everyone's like more or less on the consensus, because electrification by renewables is happening. Renewables are really developing fast. There's a lot of projects out there. The timeliness is maybe the question in the midterm. The other thing is, we're saying in the new scenarios, it's still the same thing, and there's a lot of push for solar and wind for sure in all the countries. There's also the hydrogen that we've included this year, because the hydrogen demand, as you mentioned, to substitute for industry and to later transport fuels. And this is creating an extra need for electricity. So this is adding to the mix. So this is something that has to be taken into account, because we will be presenting this year with the demand reassessed. We also have the export numbers for countries like Morocco or Egypt that want to export. This means you have to add even more renewables to the mix. Now, another factor that's coming in is nuclear, because countries even in the north now are reassessing nuclear. So Italy now has a plan to refocus on nuclear. Egypt, Jordan, Morocco. I mean, these are all countries that are looking at more like decarbonated rather than just renewables. And if we look at the actually decarbonated share, it would reach something above 90%, like even 97%, I think, for the North countries in their electricity mix by 2050. So this is what I can add. But in terms of, it's not maybe progressing as fast as we wanted in the past years, but it's definitely going much faster than what we expected a few years ago. I don't know if that's making sense. So there's reason for optimism for this going ahead. I think that's really something that we can bet on will be happening. Voilà.
Yeah.
So if I understand well, both of you, there will be no constraint of electricity production to allow the electrification of all end uses. It's what in the region. It's what I have understood.
There might be I think it's more the midterm that's going to be a real hassle, because for sure when you look after 2040, things will have sorted out themselves. 2030, 2035, there is a real hiccup, because, for instance, a lot basing on hydrogen that's not going to be online before 2035. Even the electricity renewable projects for solar and wind, there's a lot of infrastructure and grid that needs to come up. So those are the bottlenecks, but they're definitely more present for the midterm than they are for the very long term. If that makes sense. So yeah, it's an issue, but not a technical issue. In the end, is a more of a mismatch issue and not of a capacity issue and technology issue. So yeah, this is one of the question marks, is if we can bring the financing and the technology and build everything but on a timely manner to meet the demand that we're foreseeing and the shifts that we're pushing.
Thank you for this clear answer. Personally, I share this vision. I don't know if the same ideas for the others. So I don't know if our Jordan colleagues are ready to make some presentation or to react on what we have presented on the contribution of renewables. So if you can just inform me about the situation, if our colleagues from Jordan are ready. Or at least you are muted. Ahmad, are you here? So I see you in the participant list, but...
Okay, yes.
Okay. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, morning, everybody. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I'm Muhyiddin Tawalbe.
Okay. Do you have some particular presentation, or you just want to react about the Jordan situation?
No, actually, I don't have a specific presentation.
Okay.
For this webinar, and also I would like to thank you very much for organizing this important event for the energy modeling. But I wanted to highlight also something related to the our energy strategy, which is now is under maybe evaluation under and also the Ministry of Energy is updating this strategy according to the current situation in Jordan, and also enhancing and also amending the renewable energy and energy efficiency law back in let's say in May this year. So they are currently updating the renewable energy and energy efficiency law, and also we don't know exactly what will be the strategy and specifically for the energy efficiency. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, also we have let's say a 9% according to the recent strategy, 9% of reducing energy consumption by 2030. This percentage is a cumulative percentage, including all sectors, not a specific sector. But unfortunately, the strategy doesn't mention actually a specific intervention for each sector. But recently, last month, also the Ministry of Energy has published which is called the third NIAP for energy efficiency. We with a promising let's say targets to be achieved by within the next 2 years. So this is the most important. Now, currently, also the government is also working on improving energy efficiency through a program targeting public building in Jordan. They are designed this program in cooperation with the other maybe international donors. Hopefully it will come to the ground next year. This program for improving energy efficiency in the public buildings. This is almost what we have in Jordan updates regarding the energy efficiency. You know, Didier and other colleagues, that there are several programs are being, let's say, operational in Jordan. We have the EU program also addressing energy efficiency in the industrial sector. Till now, the Ministry of Energy through GREF has implemented around 60 energy audits this year, 100 energy audits, and also within the next year will be another 60 energy audits, and also implementation of some of these measures come within the energy audits. This is a brief situation about Jordan regarding energy efficiency.
Okay, thank you. So we will wait the month of May to have your strategy officially approved. Do you have just you can give us some main ideas or discussion you have internally about the share of renewable or penetration of electric vehicles? Where are the debate, in fact, in Jordan about the scenario?
Jordan recently, and last month or 2 months ago, we had in Jordan a problem regarding the let's say e-mobility, electrical vehicles, and the Jordan government has raised the custom and tax duties on these vehicles, and also which is negatively impacted, let's say, the penetration of these vehicles in the Jordan market, for enhancing the e-mobility. But during the last 5 years, Jordan witnessed a huge, let's say, increase in using these the electrical vehicles in Jordan. Actually, till now I don't have the figures, but it's much more than the let's say normal or gas vehicles. And
Okay,
also the government also, not the government, the private sector is also extending the charging station in or over the country for serving the EVs.
Thank you for this updating.
But I will send you, maybe if you are interested, I will send you much information about the situation, how many electric vehicles are imported and the growth rate and so on. I have this data, but currently I don't have the let's say the right computer, which is yeah.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for this offer. So again, I open the floor to all the large audience we have today. If you want to have to raise question or to make comments on both presentation, this is the time for you to do that. So Florent or Bruno, do you want to make the last comment? I will make a conclusion after, but if you want to add some remarks.
Maybe going back to the presentation concerning OMEC scenario, I was wondering in the share renewables in the final consumption, what is the relative importance between waste from biomass? We have seen in Morocco there is a penetration of biomass. What would be the share of renewable hydrogen, renewable electricity, and so on? Because I guess this 54% does not represent the direct share of renewable. It includes the direct and indirect shares through the renewable electricity.
Yes, from my side, I don't have the answer, but same remark. Yes, of course. I think as it is a net zero scenario, the ProMed net zero, you can't do capture and carbon sequestration on the 45% of fossil fuel energy demand. So it should cover partly or full of the other part of the energy demand. Yes, Didier?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I made a mistake.
You raise your hand.
Yes. Okay, if there is no other remark, it's time to make a short conclusion.
Or Lisa, you wanted to add something?
No, just quickly about that question. Sorry, I didn't jump quickly enough on my microphone. Yes, I'm not sure I understood, but yeah, the final consumption, there's the electrification, that's 55, 59%, depending, but more or less between 50 and 60%, depending on each country by 2050. And that's pure electricity. And then there's the direct use of renewables in the end use. And so when we calculate how much of the consumption is green, it's basically including how much of the electricity is green, which is nearly all by 2050, plus the bioenergy use, so biofuels, biomass and waste, and so on. And so in the end, there's about 20% take or leave of fossil fuels that would still be used by 2050. And that's mainly natural gas, obviously. Voilà, that was just my addition to your question.
There is a question from my friend Waida Cruz from APRO in Algeria. She asked, is the use of electro-agriculture in the long term has been taken into account in the decarbonization scenario? And maybe to explain, what do you call by electro-agriculture? It's mean electrification of tractors or electrification of process within agriculture?
I think it's the combined production of electricity and agriculture, so like agrivoltaïsme. I don't know.
Okay.
Waïda, c'était ça je sais pas, peut-être que le micro est muté. Je vais autoriser le micro de Madame Clouche.
Madame Clouche,
vous faisiez référence à l'agrivoltaïsme pour l'électroagriculture? Ah, ok, sans micro.
Okay. So she say yes. So do you have some remarks on that? What did you get from your different studies on the relationship with autorisé? Do you have something to add on that based on your different studies?
No, specifically on agrivoltaïsm, but in the renewable development, usually, for example, the Tunisian scenario, 1/3 of the total renewable capacity development is covered by self-consumption, so small power plants that are not centralized. So it's something that has also to be taken into account in the prospective scenarios. And for the agrivoltaïsm, I think it's the topic. The thing is to use 1 square meter of agriculture, to use it for both purpose, so production of agriculture, so production of vegetables or fruits, and also adding PV roof, so it can protect from the sun, protect the production and enable to have more space to produce photovoltaic electricity. Yeah, it's for now it's quite small, but it can be taken into account in the future energy mix. But the most part is centralized energy production. So
thank you.
Perhaps one point to add is when you see the number of gigawatt that has to be implemented, a good indicators that has been produced by our TSO in France on energy prospective pathway is to have the number of gigawatts installed per year and to compare it to the best practice. So best practice in Europe, it's Germany. So they compare the pace that is needed in the future, and they compare it with the best pace that has been reached in some countries. So perhaps that could be in China, in Germany, but you can compare which the country you want, and sometimes that will show you if it makes sense or if it's too ambitious. So then when you add more efficient and more sufficient assumptions upstream, so at the beginning of the modeling, you will avoid you will decrease this electricity demand, or you will mitigate this demand, and so you will need less power plant in the future. So you can link directly also the effects of efficiency and sufficiency to the need of renewable to cover the electricity demand, and then you can have a better pace or a more realistic pace of renewables. And if all the assumptions have been pushed to the maximum in sufficiency and efficiency, then you have to take into account the pace of renewable development and say what will be the policies to make this development, this ambitious development, a reality. So it's all linked in these pathways.
Thank you, Florence. Yes. So last chance for a question or remarks from the audience. If not, I will make a short conclusion. So first of all, I would like to thank Enerdata for the huge effort to make this comparison of result. I think it's important to base our discussion not only on concept or on vision, but also on concrete result. And this third workshop was the close loop of the series of webinars, where we start from, let's say, scenario design, modeling, and now result. And I think this is I was really happy about this series of workshop from my side. And this type of webinars can be interestingly completed by the series of NEP, discussion on NEP, that is also organized under the activity 2.4. And we have organized already one webinar on NEP. And we hope that we will be able, before the end of this project, to have a second or even a third workshop on NEP, where we discuss more on policies implementation. And if we have the chance to have, let's say, another new project, meetMED project, I think we have still some room of discussion on modeling. For example, what is the macroeconomic impact? Today we have discussion on result, what is the share of renewable, share of electric vehicle, of let's say heat pump, etc. But it could be also interesting to see the impact of this scenario on macroeconomic aspect, on GDP, on job creation, etc. And we know that there are some experiences, for example, in Tunisia, to have this type of impact evaluation. So I may say that we have still some room to have exchange of information on modeling practice in the next future. It could be also on what kind of policies we can really implement in a long-term future. For example, my impression is that we will go for more regulation as far as we have to reach our target in the long term. In the policy mix, the share of regulation will have to increase due to the importance of this target. So this is from the webinar itself. There are differences in the result, but which can be easily explained by the difference of economic context, energy context, social context, political context. But finally, it seems that there are some results are finally not so different according to the country if we look carefully by end uses. For example, on electric vehicle, air conditioning, etc. We can discuss about lighting. It seems there is a convergence among the result of scenarios, especially when we discuss about the decarbonization of economies. but it's also due to the fact that when we are designing scenario for decarbonization, it's a normative scenario. So the goal is to reach this decarbonization. So of course, we have to use all this technology which allows that decarbonization. So it's why everybody will introduce electric cars, new air conditioning system, etc. So this is a good reason why we have a sort of convergence about potential and about technologies. All this material will be put in the meetMED website, as well as the recording of the session. And I use this opportunity to thank our colleague from Recre Asma, which is the responsible of all this logistic and communication product of the project. And everything was going smoothly. So I thank you very much, all the speakers, all the audience, for this webinar organization. And I hope that you will be as numerous as you were today to follow the possible next webinar on NEP. Thank you, and have a good lunch, I suppose, for everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Didier. Bye-bye.